Hey everyone, welcome to Ajay and Nathan Discuss Movies, a show in which we discuss movies both old and new. Today we have a new movie that's out in the theater that first released this past weekend. And what is that movie title, Nathan? And who directed this movie?
Oh yeah, this movie's The Monkey, directed by Oz Perkins, who you may know as the director of Longlegs from last year.
And before we get into our thoughts on this movie, what is this movie about?
Yes, The Monkey is an adaptation of a Stephen King short story. It is about two brothers, twin brothers, who find a wind-up toy monkey amongst their father's belongings. And they find the monkey and learn that this monkey has the power to control life and death. When you turn the key, horrible deaths and accidents occur. They find it as children. They try to get rid of it. But as adults, the monkey returns and they must join forces to vanquish this malevolent force.
And how did you feel about this movie, Nathan?
I really liked this movie a lot. I didn't really know what to expect from it going into the theater. It markets itself as a horror comedy, but in actuality it's more of a comedy horror, if that makes sense. One thing is greatly emphasized over the other. It is just like 90 minutes of goofy, stupid, and I really enjoyed myself. Ajay, what are your thoughts?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I liked it. It was a fun, entertaining watch. Hour and a half movie, hour and 38-minute runtime.
Yeah.
So again, it's a breezy watch. At no point did I check my phone during the movie, or at no point did I check for the time. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I would say it's fun, but for me, slightly forgettable.
Okay.
Meaning that, like, I enjoyed it. It was fun, but in no way does it hold up in comparison to, like, Longlegs. Where I know, like, there are different tones in both movies, but in terms of, like, what's easily, like, more rewatchable, I think Longlegs slightly edges out The Monkey. The Monkey is a good movie. I enjoyed it. There were issues that I had with it. And we'll obviously get into our issues later on. But I thought it was a really pleasantly, aesthetically pleasing movie. I thought, the lines of dialogue that were in this movie, the tone in terms of, like, the humorous tones in the movie were hilarious. There was that one particular moment in the movie where you had that sort of minister at the church, or the undertaker.
Oh my god. The priest.
Yeah. And he's very much like a younger priest, and he has, like, these lines of dialogue that are just hilarious. The whole theater was cracking up, meaning only 7 people at the screening. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun movie, but I wouldn't say as if it's, like, one of the best movies I've watched in the past, like, few months.
Okay, I'll give you that. I see this movie slowly gaining a following over time. I see it as a kind of cult classic in the making, because I think it's definitely going to divide people, especially after Longlegs being just such a polar opposite kind of movie, a more patient, atmospheric procedural, and then we jump into this, which is just essentially a Looney Tunes cartoon.
B-movie.
Yeah, a B-movie, campy, like gory time. It's produced by James Wan, and just knowing that, like, this is like Malignant James Wan, like that, like the schlocky, over the top, cartoony.
It definitely had vibes of, like, Evil Dead 2.
Yeah,
especially with the Theo James's brother, his older brother, where his, like, look kind of mirrored that of Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sorry I interrupted you. What were you?
No, you're good. I was just saying, I think the tone is going to surprise some people, because it's so overtly silly, like, from the very beginning. That opening 5 minutes with Adam Scott, who shows up very briefly, I think that's kind of like the barrier to entry. That's kind of like the litmus test for, like, if you're on board with the movie. If Adam Scott with a flamethrower does not pique anyone's interest, then it's like, this movie won't work. But the second he shows up, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what this is. And the first death occurs, I'm like, okay, I'm totally on board with this silly stuff.
Yeah, I was on board when I heard that Bollywood song being played. I was like, yeah, this is like cool.
This speaks to me. But Ajay, go. What did you like about the movie?
So I enjoyed. Obviously, I thought the performances were good. Theo James always stands out. He kind of looks like Hassan Piker near the end of the of this film.
What's going on? How you guys doing? We love landlords. We're all against unions. We're here to protest against the landlords and the unions. We love them. Can we do like a quick shake on the hand? We love
Not end of the film, but like during like the second and third
I don't
act
know
of the
who
film as
that
he
is.
grown up. Okay, we'll put a side by side as well.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, they do look alike.
They look very similar. But I thought Theo James was really good. Even the child actors were pretty good.
Yeah, I thought
well.
the kid actors did really well, especially considering all their dialogue is kind of stupid.
I thought Tatiana Maslany really stole the show.
Oh, yeah.
I thought she was great as this like more cynical, nihilistic individual that keeps giving the truth to the children at a very young age.
The cold heart. Everybody dies. Some of us in our beds. Others, terrible, horrible, violent ways.
I thought the death scenes were hilariously done.
Yes.
There was like, obviously we'll get into spoilers later on, but there was that scene in the opening montage where like some arrow goes through some Indian guy's like stomach.
Yeah, and just retracts and just pulls out all of his guts.
Yeah. That was hilariously done. So yeah, I mean, there were parts of it that I enjoyed. You know, I enjoyed those parts, and I do enjoy the movie. Nathan, what parts of this film did you enjoy?
I think what strikes me the most is I kept forgetting it was a Stephen King adaptation, but then as the movie went on, the Stephen King little quirks kept showing up, like the timeline of like starting as kids to how the experiences affect them as adults, the weird like side villain that shows up for very loose reasons, that like dude that looks like an 80s rocker, even though the movie takes place in modern day, him just kind of showing up and being like, I want the monkey, give it to me. This movie felt like this strange marriage between the idiosyncrasies of Stephen King and Oz Perkins, and then you combine those together and use them for comedic effect, because a lot of the dialogue is so like, it's so weird. Like I can see it so clearly on the page in a Stephen King book, and then when it is spoken aloud, it's just so like strange, and like it hits this like auditory uncanny valley in the brain where it's like, that's not how human beings speak. Like the line, we gotta make like eggs and scramble, is absolute ridiculousness.
Yeah.
But I love the way Theo James screams that, just completely unhinged, is just beautiful. The man understood his assignment perfectly.
No.
I love it when an actor...
That's the first and last time we'll ever use that phrase on our podcast ever again.
Which one?
He understood the assignment.
He understood he did, because he's playing the twin brothers dual roles, and one is like kind of meek and more controlled, and the other is a complete and utter lunatic, right down to the mullet and the funeral suit he wears all the time. Just watching Theo James just kind of get real hammy with that performance is just very entertaining.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the dream sequences as well.
Yeah,
there's
they've
that one
got a lot of
scene-
visual flair to them.
A lot of visual effects. There was like that one where it was like a really poorly done green screen
Yeah.
effect. And I really enjoyed the novelty of it. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, no,
the way that it's done. And then especially like in terms of like the deaths that happen in those dream sequences or nightmare sequences, I thought those were really well done. You think we can get into spoilers? Do you think it's good?
I think we can get into spoilers, because it's hard to talk about the movie
Yeah.
without getting into the details of like what occurs. And so if you haven't seen it, go see it, because it's best to view this movie with fresh eyes without us telling you about all the weird stuff that happens.
All right, so we talked about what we enjoyed. What parts of this film did you sort of side eye or not necessarily fall in love with.
I would say structurally, the movie is kind of weak. It feels like comedy bits all just kind of spliced together with the through line of we've got to find the wind-up toy monkey, pretty much. It feels, after the first act, which is just the brothers as kids finding the monkey and then all the horrible deaths that occur because of it, it then goes into them as adults. Theo James as, like, he's taking his kid on a road trip because he only sees his kid once a year because he wants to distance himself because he doesn't want this kid to get hurt. It just feels a little loose because it's like we gotta kind of go on a road trip and then we kind of gotta go to my aunt's house and maybe find the monkey. It all just feels very loose, and the connective tissue is just the ridiculous, over-the-top violence, essentially. Like, and the violence is so cartoonish and silly. Like, the woman who dives into the pool, when it becomes electrified, you think, oh, she's gonna get electrocuted. No, she explodes, and her leg goes flying at Theo James's head. The realtor woman gets hit with a shotgun. She doesn't just get shot, explodes.
Yeah, this felt like a Tarantino movie.
Cartooniest.
This felt like a Tarantino movie if you directed like a comedy horror. Like this felt like on that same vibe as
this felt like a if you've seen the movie Grindhouse that him and Robert Rodriguez did, just like the cheesy, over the top, drive-in like movies aesthetic. That's kind of what this movie feels like.
Yeah.
And so I was talking about negatives. Yeah, I'd say the big one is there isn't much like narrative thread, at least a strong one, going on throughout the movie. And so by the midway point, I'm just like, I'm having fun, but there's not much to sink my teeth into, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, at times, like I mentioned this to you before we got the cameras rolling, but it did feel kind of tonally inconsistent to me. Like, obviously, I know that the humor is there, and there's a lot of great jokes and humor and all that, but there are moments where it's just like, if you guys don't know, the film towards the near end, it really comes to show like the reality of fatherhood and the importance of a father reconnecting with his son after so long. And the monkey, if you guys don't know, is this like very mythical being. Yeah, it's not a toy monkey. It's like a figure of cursing the family. It's kind of like a voodoo doll, but for like monkeys. Basically that. When you describe it, it's hilarious. But it's about fatherhood and about this guy reconnecting with his son. And when we are introduced with his son, that's where the tone kind of meshes with me in sort of an uneven way, because there are long sequences in this movie where the son is outside and the father's inside the motel room, and he's waiting with bating breath for him to come back. And that kind of meshed overall inconsistently with what I thought the movie was supposed to be.
Okay. Oh, that emotional,
that dynamic between
father-son dynamic.
Yeah, especially one where he's like in the motel bathroom, and he locked the door, and obviously Theo James, the audience as well, thinks that he offed himself because he knows that his dad is not going to see him anymore. And he's like trying to open the door, and then he opens the door. I feel like that sequence kind of didn't mesh with the overall tonal, comedic point of that film.
I see where you're coming from. I understand, but for me, I thought the movie had that silly tone, that the tone was consistent, and the more emotional beats, I'd say, didn't clash, but they just felt underdeveloped for the most part. I think there's something subtextual in the movie about like how people deal with grief, how it like affects how death, the ever-present shadow of death, affects people in different ways, because the two brothers, one grew to be emotionally distant, the other grew to be an obsessive psycho. And kind of like how them never truly dealing with the deaths in their families, like they never reconciled any of that. But then that is at odds with the silly, goofy haha watching a man deep throat hornets and die. Yeah. It's like the two things like don't mesh well, I would say. I wouldn't say it's like great, like big tonal like whiplash, but I'd say it does feel at least narratively inconsistent. And I don't know why I thought there was something about like people's relationship with like how we process death or tragedy. Like there was this great scene when they're at their aunt's house and just there's a crowd of people outside. They're just like, they're bringing out the body! And you see cheerleaders in the crowd like hooting and hollering as they drag out a corpse. It's like there's something there trying to say something about people's relationship with tragedy, but it isn't like a fully formed thought.
Yeah.
It's the idea is there.
There's an idea to it, but it's not like really fully fleshed out in terms of like, okay, but like what's it actually trying to say? Which I'm happy that the film kind of navigated away from. Mm-hmm. But I did feel as if there were scenes in this movie in which like it kind of didn't really vibe well with what it was trying to actually show.
Yeah.
Where the humor kind of undercuts the emotional sincerity of the film.
Yeah. But then at the same time, I'd say that the movie has this weird like emotional detachment, which is why all that the comedy coming from all this horrible death and destruction is what hits so hard. I love there's such a great edit in the movie when they are adopted by their aunt and their uncle played by Oz Perkins, and they have the monkey. They're just like, we're going to test it out. We're going to see, like, if we turn the key, if someone dies, and then it just hard cuts to Oz Perkins' funeral. The funniest
hilarious.
Died so hard, and they're just like, yeah, he was trampled by 67 horses.
He looked like cherry pie.
They just scoop him out of the sleeping bag. It's like that emotional, cynical detachment works for the movie. But then I see what you're saying, where when it does try to go back to like a more kind of real relationship, you feel a little like, ooh, I don't know how this is gelling with me.
I felt as if they should have just made the relationships as silly as the jokes and the kills that were in this movie. I feel like that could have been better. But when I left the theater yesterday, an issue that I had with the film, and it's kind of mellowed down the more I think about it, was the production design. In terms of like, there are times in which this movie was set in the 90s, but it felt like it was in the 70s. You know, like Oz Perkins comes out and he looks like he's
got the giant sideburns.
Yeah, he looks like he's Danny Masterson from That 70s Show, you know?
He just looks absolutely ridiculous.
You need a coffee table.
Yeah, that'd really pull the room together.
But like after further reflection, I'm like, no, but that's kind of hilarious.
Yeah,
and the way that he treats the children is kind of hilarious. There's that moment in which like they pull out a phone book.
Oh, yeah, and it's like in contemporary time. He pulls out a giant yellow pages.
Right, and when you like leave the theater, you're like, that's kind of stupid. But then after a little while, you're like, no, but that's funny.
Yeah, no.
Even like the rotary phone, like that you have to like do this. That was set in 2024, but it's hilarious because no one uses landlines anymore.
No,
you know?
No, like he's at a payphone, and it's like, where? What?
Yeah.
Why is this happening? Yeah.
But like the one thing in terms of the production design is that like there wasn't that much difference between like 1999 and 2024.
Yeah.
In terms of the layout, like obviously those funny scenes were hilarious, and like I understand that the bad production design was purposeful in that situation. But then you kind of get into like the grittier details of it. And
when you start to think about it more, you're like, this doesn't really make sense. Like the timelines feel like this world is very anachronistic. Like it's not really like a hard like this is the 90s and then this is contemporary modern day, because like the kids in the school in the 90s look like they're dressed from the 70s, like you said. But yeah, that is something that like hits the brain, but at the same time I think it just adds to so much of the absurdity in the movie, because so much is just so visually strange and interesting. Like I kept laughing when the aunt is walking through her home with just the massive like magnum in her hand. She's got the the rollers in her hair. It's just such a odd visual that
When
they
she's like
linger
in
on.
the mirror and she's like pulling things out of her face.
Yeah.
That was very gross, but I enjoyed it.
Very nasty, just very nasty, very strange. The look of, I want to talk about the monkey itself, is, it's the silliest thing.
Yeah.
It's so funny, but at the same time, there's something about it that is very uncanny looking. Like, its skin looks like legitimately flesh-like. The eyes of it, just, it gives you this uncanny vibe where it's like, this is the silliest, dumbest thing I've ever seen, but there's still like this little like thing on the back of your neck where it's just like, but there's something wrong with it. Like, I laughed every time that thing showed up, and then the camera would just linger on it when it does its dumb little smile. I was basically mimicking that smile the entire movie, just this dumb, big eating grin on my face, because it's so ridiculous when when it teleports into like the driver's seat and it looks like a small child with the little drum. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoy this movie.
I really, the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, I just want to see it again, because it is, at the end of the day, despite the kind of narrative issues we have with it, it's just such a fun time at the movies, and it is such a funny movie, and it's so rare to get a movie that is just such pure comedy throughout its runtime, and a well-made kind of comedy as well. I really just like seeing Oz Perkins flex this new muscle of his, going from Longlegs and to this, which is just campy, schlocky fun. I really admire it. I admire him as a director, his quirks, his idiosyncrasies, the stuff that he finds interesting and wants to play with. I really like it. It makes him an interesting director to watch.
I enjoyed the fact that he was able to take a risk, because the fact that he followed up Longlegs with a certified B movie is a risk, and not many directors are willing to take that risk.
Not many like studios and production companies are willing to let a director kind of explore that for themselves, and kind
But
of
more
like,
importantly, directors don't do that as much as they should.
No, they really
It's
don't.
one thing for productions and studios to allow it, but it's an entirely different thing for directors to, do a complete reversal and to do something that they truly want to do instead of what critics or what the audiences expect out of them.
Yeah.
So I really do enjoy the fact that Oz Perkins is willing to go there and is willing to, make films that are humorous and gory and bloody and, with great death scenes, because it's something that I think we really kind of need in today's, landscape of films.
Yeah.
We need a little bit of not every film needs to have like this emotionally sincere moment with like avant-garde ideas and messages, which maybe this film kind of plays off of that. But I think in a lot of ways this is something that's kind of needed in terms of just like a director that's just willing to like just have fun on screen.
Exactly.
And understands that like at the end of the day, like this is a film, like the purpose of a film is to entertain people. And I was entertained by watching this film.
Great. I was greatly entertained, yeah.
The only part in the film that I kind of didn't like was the beginning part with like the children. I feel like that part, like you could easily just
tell me about that, because I think my favorite part of the movie is that kind of first act setup. I just find the brothers' dynamic very funny, because one is so meek and the other is just such a blistering, just like all the lines he says to this kid. He's like, you wanna have the monkey, you wanna be Mrs. Monkey, you wanna eat its banana, say it or I'll eat your placenta.
You thought that was funny?
I thought that was incredibly funny.
I thought the humor went better as the film went along.
Okay.
I didn't enjoy that part, and that was the part in which in my theater there were like 4 or 5 walkouts during it.
That's great. I love that. That makes me love it even more.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, no, stay. It's going to get better. I promise you, the film is going to get better. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun.
It is what it is. The word of the Lord.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap up our thoughts.
Yeah.
On it.
The monkey is just a really fun time at the movies. It is pure silly, pure goofy. If you want a tight, like 90 or so minutes, just like B-movie campy schlockfest, then I think you're going to get a lot out of The Monkey.
How was your theater experience?
It was only 4 people, including myself. There was a couple behind me. I think they were making out because I kept hearing the little lip smacks during quieter moments in the movie. But then the only 2 people really laughing were me and one elderly man seated to my right. And so him and I had a pretty good time.
Yeah.
I'm sure the couple behind me also had a really good time, but for different reasons.
Yeah, I remember it was like 6 or 7 people, and when I walked out, there was a person, like there was a group of 2 guys in front of me that were talking to like the person that scans the tickets.
Yeah.
Before you enter the theater, and he's like, "Yeah, you gotta watch that movie, The Monkey," and he's like, "Yeah, 2 words, hilariously gory."
Yeah.
And then he left, and then I followed him. I was like,
and then I followed them.
followed him, and no, but then I also went to the ticket vendor, and I said, "Yeah, same thing."
Same.
Yeah, same.
I'll
what he
have what
said.
he's having.
Yeah. So that was a pretty fun moment, very
Yeah, no.
curb moment. But yeah, overall, my thoughts, I enjoyed it. It was a fun, entertaining watch. An hour and 30 minutes. It's an hour and 30-minute runtime, but I enjoyed it. There are times where I felt like the tone kind of was inconsistent. It kind of felt like, in a lot of ways, like a horror Adam Sandler movie.
You're gonna beat me? At golf? Oh, you're on. You're in big trouble, though, pal. I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast.
You eat pieces of shit for breakfast?
In which, like,
Wow. Jesus.
That doesn't sound like, that's not a diss.
That's that. No, please continue.
I mean, I like Adam Sandler movies, but yeah, I mean, there are moments in which like it kind of felt like inconsistent at times. But I thought the visuals were great, even though the production design at times could be an issue. Overall, the production design was hilarious for what it was. The performances were good. Tatiana Maslany was amazing. Theo James was also really good with what he had to work with, and I think this is great for Oz Perkins. I think, it really shows that Oz Perkins is willing to steer to the left when everyone's going to the right, and is able to make films that he truly enjoys and that he wants to put out there, and that the audience also has an interest in doing. So overall, it is a fun, entertaining watch. I really wish that the ending of the film, when the cheerleaders got railroaded by this truck, first off, that was a long set of light.
It was a long light. Well, they had to wait for the literal embodiment of death to cross the road, which was, God, that is when just like everything is thrown out the window. It's just like, and here's the literal spirit of death on screen. You're just like, cool. I was like even thinking just like, is that a Stephen King cameo? Because it looked a little like Stephen King. Just like, I'm willing to believe that's a Stephen King cameo.
I really wanted, when the cheerleaders die in that bus, I really wanted the film to end with George Michael's The Monkey. I thought it would have been hilariously done. I mean, obviously, they probably couldn't clear the song because it is kind of expensive, the song. But I thought it would have been hilarious if they just ended with a cut to credits and then you just hear George Michael's "Why Can't You Do It? Why Can't You Set Your Monkey Free?" That's hilarious. That would have been a hilarious ending.
Not enough songs about monkeys for this movie called The Monkey.
Yeah. So overall, I mean, I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was entertaining. Yes, there are times where like the tones kind of clash with one another, and it is. I mean, let's be honest. It is a messy movie. It's a messy movie,
literally and figuratively.
Yeah, but it is a fun watch, and don't really think too much about it, about the plot or about the monkey, because the more you think about the monkey, the more questions you have. And
what questions did you have about the monkey?
There are a lot, and we won't get into it. We won't get into it. But the more questions you have, so just go in there completely blind like I did, and just sit down and watch. Watch the colors. Watch the
enjoy the
performances.
ride.
Yeah, enjoy the ride. Enjoy the funny death scenes. Enjoy the gang of women, girls bullying that little boy.
He was bullied just like by a group of, he was just in the locker room just like, here, your mom's the lead of the family, your dad left and it's your fault and you cry every night, nerd. And they steal his pants.
Yeah. So yeah, those are our thoughts on the movie.
Great.
Let us know how you felt about the movie. Did you love it? Did you hate it? How would you rate this movie?
How's it compared to Longlegs?
What were your issues with the movie? Let us know in the comments down below. Or what did you love about this movie?
Yeah.
Let us know down in the comments below. And what monkey would you be if you were a monkey?
If you had to choose between Robbie Williams' monkey and then the monkey, which monkey's your favorite?
Or Dev Patel's Monkey Man? Then
Monkey-
choose which monkey you want to be.
What's your monkey tier list?
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
What type of monkey do you want to be in your alternative life?
Orangutan.
Orangutan. That's a good option. So what movie do you want us to discuss next? Let us know so that we won't take it into account, and we'll just decide what movie we want to discuss.
And we'll just decide ourselves, because you know what we learned from the monkey? The monkey decides what the monkey does.
And we are monkeys.
We are, and we decide what we do.
So that's it for us. Bye. It's a good George Michael song. It's very female empowered.
Is it?
Yeah, the monkey means vagina.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that what this movie was a metaphor for? Vagina?
Yeah.
I get it. I see.
I mean, yeah.
Because I wanted to stick my dick in that monkey.